everybody, Suzy Woo here, president of the Buffalo Cleveland NCGR, the National Council for Geocosmic Research. What a mouthful. Well, I'm way excited today. I mean, I'm always excited, but we've got a big ass event coming up in June. So we are bringing to you AstroViktor, and I quote unquote met him through Astrologer's channel, and I loved him so much that I took his Harari course. I took some solar return work. I know I've taken several things, and I bought all of his books, and he's really, really amazing. And I've watched him grow over the years and like drop all of this weight and get in shape. And I love how he weaves his story into, or weaves astrology into his actual story. So he's going to be here in Western New York, June 6th through the 9th. And we're having this beautiful event at the Chautauqua Harbor Hotel, which is right on Lake Chautauqua. It's a really nice place. And the course, or the retreat, is going to be called Remedies of the Planets. We're doing a combination presentation. It's mostly Viktor, but I'm going to kind of supplement that and pad it up with some guided meditations, some energy healing, and then one of my really big gong sound healing journeys. So I'd like to now welcome to you guys, AstroViktor.
Hi everyone, it's nice to be here and I'm looking forward to this retreat. I think more and more people are asking about remedies, but I do believe that one of the key steps when we are looking for a remedy in our chart is actually to understand the trauma behind the planets. So that's what we are going to be doing in the retreat as well. We are going to be recognizing the traumatic experiences around the planet. And you're going to get a bunch of information. Most of the traumatic experiences do come from family and early environments. So I'm going to talk to you about different positions and different traumatic experiences connected to each of the planets. And then after, we can come up with some technical or some practical ways of overcoming those challenges. So that will be the agenda, and half day is going to be more of theory, and the second part of the day is going to be actually working with your own chart. Now, of course, depending on how many people there will be on the retreat, it's not a promise that we will be able to go through everyone's chart, because if there are, 40 people, then it's just going to be impossible. But we will try to give as much feedback for everyone as possible so that they might know what to work with. But today I wanted to talk about Neptune, which is, one of the nicest planets, probably, or is considered to be quite a nice one, but it does have a lot of traumatic experiences behind it as well. And I'm not going to be giving a full lecture today on Neptune. I remember when I was teaching recently about Neptune, just from a vocational point of view. And there we also looked at some trauma signatures. We were talking about Neptune only for 1.5 hours, and that was only from a work experience point of view. So we're going to speak about the outer planets a lot in that particular retreat, surely, because they are some of the biggest trauma signatures in our lives. But if you just think about what is trauma, trauma could be classified in different ways. Sometimes trauma is an intense emotional or physical or mental or even psychic disturbance. And usually it stems from stress or shock, which has got a psychological impact on us. And when we are looking at these 4 categories, and this is basically how the psychology determines what trauma is. So it has got 4 components. We've got the, as I said, emotional, the physical, the mental, or the psychic part of it. I mean, let's just think about it. The mental side is surely very Mercury and Uranus related. And that could be, for example, a stroke, or it could be a psychological disorder, or certain type of sudden changes in your life. So, for example, if you've got Uranus being angular, for example, in your chart, that would be a mental, more of an indication of a mental trauma that you have experienced. So, for example, Uranus in my chart is in the 10th house, and then I got left by my parents, which is, of course, can not only cause an emotional matter, but a mental disturbance as well in someone's life. Now, the emotional body is very Pluto and Moon, or I would call Pluto and Moon as the rulers of the emotional body. And often we are going to be creating trust issues, or we go through certain type of an abuse or betrayal, or even losses in our life. Saturn would be the physical body. So often, I mean, if you just think about Saturn as basically it's a frame. So it's your frame of your own body as well. Saturn represents the bone structure and so forth. And all of our body are made of like a huge skeleton, right? And then we've got the fleshes around. So often with Saturn, for example, the physical body is going to be impacted by a traumatic experience. And you might think that Pluto would be the planet that rules rape, but often Saturn plays a very significant role in that, because obviously a rape would be an attack against your physical body. But of course, this could talk to you about certain type of injuries or birth disorders as well, actually, with Saturn. Now, and then we've got the spiritual body, which is going to be very Neptunian. And Neptune is the planet of when we lose faith, when we even being possessed. Often what happens with Neptune is that we don't think that no one is gonna, like, we don't think that anyone is gonna understand us. Therefore, we might keep secrets, such as because, I don't know, there is this voice talking to you, and then I don't want to look stupid. So I'd rather just not talk about it. But there is a lot. I mean, and then of course I can give you now quite a lot of trauma signatures, but I'm not going to do that right now. So let's just dive into this Neptune a little bit. Often what happens with Neptune is that we question things. Did it happen or did it not? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to figure out whether something around us is real or not. Often we ask the question whether, have I imagined something or did it actually not happen? It's very hard to pinpoint something with Neptune. Often it looks like it's an invisible problem. Often actually we imagine there is a problem there. It's kind of like making a mountain out of a mole. And the other thing that I would like to mention with Neptune is that, let's say from a relationship point of view, often the partner we get together with looks really well put together. Therefore, it's like a princess story. Oh, I found this particularly handsome guy, and then he's so sweet, and you know what? It's kind of like I hit the jackpot. And then it goes like that for a while. And then we have got this awakening moment when we realize that actually we fell in love with a kind of like an image that we wanted to experience, but the person turns out to be completely different. The other thing that we often do with Neptune, that we try to avoid pain. We are trying to avoid the grief. So we just shuffle or sweep something under the carpets because we are not ready to face kind of like a psychological turmoil. But again, remembering that not noticing something or not dealing with something doesn't mean that it's not going to be at the back of your mind. That's why Neptune is one of the planets that is connected to healing, having to heal, something to do with that spiritual body. Otherwise, it's going to be always bringing you some further traumatic experiences in your life. And I'm going to give you an example on that really shortly. And often, even with Neptune, we have got some behavioral patterns happening in our lives. So imagine that we are leaving something behind. We are trying to escape from something. And often we have got self-defeating tendencies going on. It's kind of like the other big thing I usually see with Neptune, that especially when it's around the rising sign, Neptune around the rising sign brings a lot of scandalous situations. So we get into love triangles, we get cheated on, or, just think about Marilyn Monroe. She has got Neptune on the on the rising sign. And let's just be frank, she did go through some scandalous relationships and a lot of those things. Because what Neptune wants, it wants a glamorous lifestyle. And then often it does anything possible to get that glamour in their lives. Or imagine also Neptune being on the rising sign, because Neptune always wants to be beautiful and it would do anything. This is why Neptune is kind of like the seven dwarves and, the whatever the little girl is called, Snow White, right? And so on. And that's why I call Neptune as the rotten apple syndrome. Snow White got this beautiful apple, she bit into it, and then, of course, she fell asleep. It's a very Neptunian story, because she was so trusting and she was so naive. So with Neptune, we can get sucked into situations where, unfortunately, someone is going to take advantage of us. So I would say that with Neptune, also very typical, kind of like this ostrich policy. You know what the ostrich does? It does its head, it puts its head into the sand, because well, I'm guessing it keeps it cool as well. But on top of that, it's just the blindfold. That's why we often get disappointed with Neptune, because we cannot see exactly what is happening right in front of us. And the other big thing with Neptune is the feeling empty. We know that something is missing. I would call it as the grass is greener on the other side of the fence syndrome. We are yearning for something in our lives, which is definitely better than what we have got right now. Maybe, a better relationship, or I wish I had a better car, or I wish I had a better job. Or Neptune, for example, in the 4th for the 10th house, often I wish I had different parents. Parents who loved me, parents who supported me, parents who allowed me to travel, or I wish they had more money. Whatever the scenario is. And of course, the sign and the aspects to the planet is going to talk to us about more specific informations about that. The other thing with Neptune, that when you are wandering about aimlessly in life, such as you don't know what is your spiritual mission, because Neptune can represent that, then often life is kind of like collapsing around you. We can call Neptune as the Eden of garden. We are always wanting to go back to that source where everything was beautiful. So often Neptune lives in the past, and therefore it's unable to move forward, because it's remembering how beautiful it was, for example, while the cord still connected me with my parents. So let's say Neptune in the 4th house might not want to stay at home, might not want to stay in the country where they were born, but they might not be able to move on due to certain type of kind of guilt. Oh, my parents, they need to be looked after, or I have to be able to help them. Or I'm only going to leave the country, for example, when my parents passed away. Often with Neptune, we blame ourselves for something. Often we even don't go for job opportunities out of guilt, out of subconscious guilt, because, oh, my father failed. a business, I have to fail one as well. So we tend to be kind of like following the footsteps of the parents. And we will see that Neptune plays a very significant role from that perspective. And this is the reason why often people's life don't work out with Neptune. So it's kind of like you make a sacrifice in your life, and then you're going to end up neglecting yourself. Often, actually, Neptune is kind of like it's a self-neglect planet, basically, where because you want to be able to help others, you want to help your parents, your colleagues, your siblings, and so forth, that you ignore your own needs. And often it's about lack of trust in the self. Now, Neptune and Pluto has got quite a lot of similarities, actually. On one hand, both planets represent addictions. They are just different addictions. Because Pluto is, for example, more to do with being addicted to power or love or people or achievements, or we can even get addicted to chaos as well. Neptune gets addicted to drugs, pills, weight problems, food, sensations, or feelings. Both of them are pretty much about trust issues as well. But with Neptune, it's the lack of trust in the self. While with Pluto, it's the lack of trust in others. So Neptune doesn't trust the self or life itself. Sometimes it has got the feeling that God has walked away from me, or I cannot trust spirituality anymore because I had a bad reading and then it didn't come true. But also it's important to remember that often what happens is that we have got a reading provided to us, but we're going to have to walk towards the opportunity. And Neptune doesn't always walk towards the opportunity. It just sits on the fence waiting for the opportunity to come by. And that's a big problem with Neptune. And Neptune also is the planet of codependency. I mean, if we think about that, this is the higher octave of Venus, and Venus represents codependency also. But Venus and Neptune are associated with validation. And often with Neptune, it's the validation of feelings, validation through sex, for example, or validation through helping others. Imagine Neptune as the planet of redemption. So we do something because there is somehow a karmic guilt going on there. We can also call Neptune as the planet of limerence. It's kind of like the immediate love and the feeling that it is meant to be. It's a little bit of a Mariah Carey syndrome. We belong together, if you guys remember the song. But in reality, it usually never happens. Neptune is kind of like the no reciprocation in love syndrome. Someone puts a spell on you. Both Pluto and Neptune can actually represent toxic relationships. But with Neptune, this is kind of like the predator versus the victim. So often with Neptune, we lower our standards, we lower our walls. Especially that would be the case in synastry if Neptune is in aspect to someone's ascendant or descendant, or Neptune in aspect to the IC or the MC. Actually, that represents often abuse in childhood. Somewhere where the parent invaded the child's privacy somehow. Imagine, often you see these teenagers movies where the kids are, wearing these dark lipsticks and then they dress up as an emo person and so forth. And then they just shut the door on the parents because the parents want to help, but the child doesn't want that. That's actually very Neptunian. So Neptune has got the rebellious side to it as well. Now, today I'm not going to give specific examples because we're going to do that on the retreat. But for example, just one example, Neptune, Venus, hard aspects. Often what we confuse there is love with abuse. So I'm going to give an example here because what I experienced with Neptune is that you meet someone and like Neptune is the sweet talker. It really knows how to talk the panties off of a woman, for example. And then they kind of like talk you in, like talk themselves into your life, and then you fall in love with the person. And then 3 years later, you wake up and the person becomes a predator. And often what this Neptunian type of person does, that they are trying to figure out your sweet spots, how far you can be stretched, what's your limit, and so on. And then once they get you, that's when they become the predator. And then they become basically this narcissistic person, what we tend to be calling, nowadays, it's a very popular word. But that person was narcissistic 3 years before as well. Nothing's changed. All they did was that. Have you ever seen the movie Fall from the Grace? It's a very interesting movie. We've got this kind of 55-year-old woman, and then she gets together with this 30-year-old boy or young guy. And he is so sweet. He is a good catch. He exactly knows the right words. He knows where to take the woman, what dinner, what flowers. He's just the brilliant guy. So they even get married within a month or so. And as soon as they get married, the guy steals her house. He goes to the bank to take out loads of money. He steals her money from her job as well, and the woman gets arrested. He goes to prison. She goes to prison. And then finally, she finds this lawyer who actually is ready to help her. And then they manage to act. And then the woman thought that she killed this guy, but actually he didn't die. So they found him with the woman's best friend. Such a Neptunian story. That's exactly what Neptune does. Sweet talks you and then potentially steals something from you. Now, it doesn't have to be this dramatic all the time with Neptune, but this is just one scenario. So maybe the question could be here, what can we do with Neptune? Some of the key words with Neptune is that we're going to have to see the world in a real form. We're going to have to keep boundaries. We're going to have to actually understand that often we are kind of like, because Neptune also represents drama triangle as well. And the first step with Neptune, we're going to have to recognize this drama triangle. Now, I'm not too sure whether your audience understands the drama triangle or not. But basically, the drama triangle has got 3 parts to it. We've got by the way, it was developed in the 60s by a psychologist called Stephen Karpman. And basically, there are 3 parts to it. We've got the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. So what exactly happens with Neptune is that we've got the victim. And the victim is that, for example, oh, poor me, I don't have enough time, or there is nothing I can do, or it's too hard. It's a lot of suffering involved with this victim mindset, or I have to do this because I promised, and all those type of things. And then we've got the rescuer or the hero archetype, who actually stops doing this victim mindset, and then it's going to be like, oh, poor you, let me help you out. Don't worry, it will be okay. I'm here with you. Let me take over this problem from you, to ease your burden. And then we've got this persecutor or the villain who is going to be blaming others. It's your fault. You are wrong. You should have taken my advice. I tried helping you, and then you didn't follow my advice. So what do you expect? So with Neptune, often we played the role of one of them, and then we're switching from one role to another. And then it's not easy to kind of like get out of this cycle. So that's briefly now the Neptunian impact of our chart. And this can especially, well, I'm going to give you some signatures actually, very briefly. Like, for example, with Neptune and Mars, it could feel like I'm not allowed to be angry. I don't know what anger means, not even kind of like having that in your vocabulary. Often it's because you were not allowed to be angry. Someone told you not to become angry. It's not nice. And then often with Neptune, Mars, we get used. Not even knowing that it was an abuse, for example, that you experienced, because often it looks like it's normal. With Neptune, Mercury, often people put words into your mouth. And then often with Neptune and Sun, for example, we have got a lack of a role model in our lives. So, for example, we don't have the father, we don't have the mom in our lives. And that's the reason why we might not be able to move forward. Or, you know, I mentioned already, well, with Neptune on the IC, especially often that's kind of like a abuse, an invasion of your privacy that could be coming into the picture. So that's briefly what Neptune could be causing in our lives.
I wanted to reflect on something there. So I have Neptune in the first house, and I definitely fell into codependency. I had over a decade of being addicted to alcohol, and I was in a very, very severely abusive marriage, and that whole relationship was 22 years. And so, yeah, it was the victim. And then getting out of that, it's never going to happen to me again. But then I became a control freak. And then it was the I told you so. So I so fall into all of that. And it's so wonderful to be through it all and on the other side and then find my peace. And now I'm on this wonderful spiritual life path where I find the deeper meaning in all. And then I kind of share everything that I've learned with my audience. And I wanted to mention, I do see a lot of my clients who have Neptune moon. And so for me, that's a feminine spiritual influencer if they're not in addictions. And but you mentioned that could be lack of a maternal figure, yeah?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
A lack of a maternal figure, but also it could be a over-idealization of a parent, where we are unable to see the real side of the parents, or we are unable to see how the parent is actually influencing our lives. So I do have Neptune in the 10th house, and one of my favorite stories to mention is Neptune is pretty close to my midheaven. And when I was studying family constellation therapy, my father kept coming up as a problem in my life. And then I got so agitated about it that I was contemplating to leave the entire family constellation course because I felt like everyone was trying to tell me that I have a father image issue. And then and anyway, I needed a couple of days to kind of digest the information, and I went back and then I spoke to the facilitator that I don't want to hear about my father anymore. I have no issue with him, and stop doing it, and so forth. And then she apologized because she said to me, I'm not going to take the words back, but I didn't realize you were this sensitive about this topic. It just means you are not ready to talk about it, and that's okay. So yes, that's what we do with Neptune. If we are not ready to face a problem, then we might just try to sweep that under the carpet, and then we are going to be running away from facing the problem. And one of the reasons probably you chose spiritual road with that Neptune is because that's kind of like a way of defense mechanism, you know, about all the experiences that you went through, because now you've got something to believe in. But sometimes what happens with Neptune is that we believe, let's say, in spirituality too much, and then it becomes our own partner, rather than having that physical person in our lives. Because let's say spirituality or healing makes me feel complete, and it's a tool to say that I'm okay alone. Neptune does that often. Oh no, I don't need anyone else in my life. Oh, I made peace with being alone. And that's sometimes the biggest lie ever. It's a defense mechanism. Um, yes, I don't know whether you have a partner or not, but just a piece of advice with Neptune
I
that
don't, and I follow what you said because I love what I do, and my family are, the people that I train or work with, and I'm pretty darn content. Now, I am open. I don't exactly market myself that way, but if the right person comes along who has similar beliefs and so forth, and is not out at the bar, that kind of thing. Like, I've got a nice strict, I live by my principles, and so it's somebody who has to be in their convictions as well.
That's right. I see. Yeah, I exactly know your feeling because also Neptune around my midheaven, I always kind of walk away from the idea of a relationship, or I also call Neptune as the planet of high standards. So it's not just about lowering the standards, but it's about really high standards as well. And often it's not easy to live up to those standards. And then basically impossible to kind of please you somehow. And I think that's what happened with me. I always raise the bar higher and higher when it comes to relationships, and I try to find the slightest little issue with the person, and then I make them run away. But Neptune is unable to do a breakup usually. It somehow makes the other person walk out of their lives rather than telling them black and white that, listen, you need to go. It's not working anymore. So even I can imagine with you 22 years of relationship that wasn't working for a very long time, but maybe we didn't know how to get out of it. So Neptune sometimes becomes sneaky and then reach the other person, to kind of walk out your life. And why? Because then, oh, poor me, I got left alone. And then everyone else is going to feel sorry for us, and everyone is going to love us because we had this tragic pain. So there is a subconscious game that Neptune can be playing, and we just need to recognize these little games, basically.
Yeah, Neptune's a beautiful planet. Yeah, all the planets have I call it a low road expression and a high road expression. And I definitely have lived the low road expression of self-deception and escapism and addictions and changing my persona, like, because in the first house, that's your self-expression. And I would change my nickname when I was little. And you know what? Now that you mentioned, well, about family things, is I had always questioned, I would ask, am I the milkman's daughter? Because I don't look anything like my father. And everybody took it to the grave. And I found out when I turned 50 that my father was not, in fact, my biological father. And it actually took load off of my back because I had a feeling all along, yet nobody would ever admit anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's briefly for today about Neptune. So if you guys are interested in the rest of the planets or certain configurations of the chart, and this is what we are going to learn with some practical remedies combined on that 3-day retreat.
Boy, is it going to be great. I'm really, really excited.
So am I.
All righty. Thank you, Viktor. We'll be seeing you
Thank
guys soon.
you.
Hopefully everyone will gather together in Western New York on beautiful Lake Chautauqua.
See you
See you next
soon.
time.
Bye.